can the disappearance of a teenage boy solve the seemingly endless killing spree that seems to haunt the streets of Chicago, Illinois? One life may or may not shed light to all those who have faced death. The streets of Illinois have been haunted by what seems to be a never-ending nightmare. Des Plaines, a seemingly wealthy city in Illinois, a very safe and quiet place to reside. On the afternoon of December 11, 1978, 15-year-old Robert Pierce was working his daily job at a pharmacy. Robert was met by a man who offered him a contracting job, which doubled his salary. Shortly after, Robert Pierce would leave the store, promising to return shortly. When Pierce failed to return, his family filed a missing person report to the Des Plaines police.
He was a good kid, he did his work, he was an honor student. There wasn't really much to it to complain about. He was a good kid.
It wasn't like him to just leave without notice, so yeah, I was worried.
The owner of the store, named John Wayne Gacy, is the man who approached Robert. But to contrast, John denied any involvement with offering Robert a job. He said he was willing to come to the station for a police statement but couldn't because his uncle just had died. He later would come at 3:20 a.m. covered in mud, claiming he was in a car accident. He had continued to deny his involvement with the disappearance of Robert Pierce.
Hello. Take a seat.
Yes.
So, I would like to know what you're doing at the pharmacy the day of Robert Pierce's disappearance.
Well, I got a call from the owner. They said I left my appointment book there.
Stop. Why? Why are you there?
I left my appointment book there, man. I'm telling you.
The cops were then inclined to do a background check on John. They discovered that John had committed battery and was arrested for sodomy of a teenage boy. They had searched for John's house. What they found was evidence which could tie John to the disappearance of Robert and possibly many more. What they found was a 1975 Maine West High School class ring and various driver's licenses, handcuffs, a 2x4 with holes drilled in the ends, books on homosexuality and pederasty, a syringe, male clothing too small for Gacy, a 6mm Brevettata starter pistol and a photo receipt from the pharmacy where Robert Pierce worked. This led him to be watched by two surveillance men. There would be a tip about his prior battery charge. It was described that he had lured the victim into his car, chloroformed him, raping him, and leaving and dumping him with chest and facial burns and rectal bleeding. An interview led him to the disappearance of John Butkovich. The same day the ring was traced back to John Allen SZYC. Who really was John Wayne Gacy? John would later take the surveillance men to dinner where he would describe a lot about his life.
I'm divorced. I do get lonely, but really I'm happy. I have a good life. Business is good. I don't have much to complain about. I'm blessed. I have a lot of passions. Making people laughing is one of them. That's why I'm a clown. Clowns can get away with murder.
With evidence and speculation continuing to pile up against John Wayne Gacy, it wouldn't be long until John had confessed.
The boy is dead. He's in the river.
He was a sick person we thought him to be. There's too much going on for him not to be guilty, and this confession would take him to jail.
His past would be revealed. It all started when 14-year-old Timothy Jack McCoy became John Wayne Gacy's first victim. On January 3, 1972, McCoy was at a layover at the Greyhound bus station on his way home where Gacy offered him a ride home. After kindly accepting his offer, McCoy got into the vehicle and they drove off. What seemed to be an ordinary ride home wasn't what he imagined when Gacy took McCoy back into his house, where he later proceeded to kill him by repeatedly stabbing him in the chest. As a result of the incident, investigators found a large blood stain under Gacy's carpet in his bedroom which belonged to the victim. The teeth that they found in his bedroom help investigators identify that they belonged to McCoy and that Gacy was guilty of this murder. In the early hours of December the 22nd, 1978, Gacy had confessed that from 1972 he had committed over 25 to 30 murders. Most were referred to as male prostitutes and male runaways. Most of those whom he murdered were lured into the house where they would be physically immobilized and tortured and sexually assaulted by Gacy. To avoid screaming, he would muffle her screams with a cloth. Once finished, Gacy would either suffocate or choke his victims to death. He would disperse the bodies in the crawl space under his house. Once there wasn't enough room, he would dispose of the bodies in the river, which were done to his last 5 victims, including Robert. There was all the evidence needed to send Gacy to prison. Gacy would be brought to trial on February 6, 1980, with a charge of 33 murders. However, prior to his trial, Gacy would spend 300 hours being evaluated by a mental doctor to convince the jury he was mentally insane. When presented with this argument, he was faced with witnesses who would support that he had full control of his actions, continued to try to avoid detection, and his murders were premeditated. Michael Rossi, a tip who had once lived with Gacy, confirmed that Gacy would force him and his employees to dig holes in the crawl space where he would dump the body.
He made me do it at the time. I didn't know what I was doing. I just thought it was the same odd job he wanted me to do. But now I realize it was helping him hide in the dark like a roach.
The defense team would scramble finding ways to prove Gacy innocent but failed to do so. Gacy would be sent to death row and remained incarcerated for 14 years. Isolated, Gacy would paint. Most of his paintings depicted a character named Pogo. Pogo was a clown. Many were sold, but to Gacy, his only intent for his paintings was to spread joy to the world.
I'm just mad he didn't suffer longer.
Sick bastard painting to bring joy to the world. He should worry about all the pain he caused to the world.
On the day of May 9, 1994, John Wayne Gacy was scheduled for his execution. He was transferred to Stateville Correctional Center. His last meal would include a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken, a dozen fried shrimp, French fries, fresh strawberries, and a Diet Coke. He was met by a priest as he would conduct prayer. His execution would take up to a total of 18 minutes. The complications of the procedure would allow for the adoption of the lethal injection. A total of only 27 victims were able to be identified. At the time of his trial, 22. The streets of Illinois were haunted by a clown, but by 1994 the clown took his last laugh.
Go to class tomorrow.
He's actually on my spot. I can't move like that. Stop making fun of me, man.
This is longer than it should. Oh, my swag.
I got you.
Catch me some roadkill today.
That shit flew off, bro.
Hello.
Hello.
Take a seat.
Yes.
So, I want to know why you were at the pharmacy the day Robert Peace disappeared.
Well, I got a call from the owner. I don't know why I keep making it southern.
I will. So I want to know why you're at the pharmacy the day Robert Peace disappeared.
Well, I got a call back from the owner. I don't know why it's southern, bro. I like you.
Hello.
Hello.
Take a seat. So I'd like to know why you're at the pharmacy to disappear at the day of the
It wasn't me. It wasn't me.
Go.